Life has always shown us that not everyone will celebrate our victories or stand beside us when we're struggling. Some people, whether out of jealousy, pride, or bitterness, will choose to cause harm. They may speak against you, plot behind your back, or try to push you down so they can rise higher. The Bible is not silent about this reality. In fact, it's full of stories where God's people faced enemies who wounded them deeply, only for God to later turn those wounds into justice and victory. One of the clearest examples of this is found in the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis. Joseph was the beloved son of Jacob, chosen and favored in ways his brothers couldn't ignore. His father gave him a special coat of many colors, and his dreams painted a future where he would rise above his family and be placed in a position of great honor. But instead of being happy for him, his brothers grew bitter. Their hearts were filled with envy, and they could no longer see Joseph as a brother. They saw him as a threat. The setting is simple but powerful. A young man full of dreams and innocent faith, surrounded by his own family members who should have protected him, yet secretly plotted to destroy him. Imagine the confusion Joseph must have felt. He trusted them, walked with them, laughed with them, but one day, as they worked in the fields, their jealousy pushed them to a decision that would change his life forever. They stripped him of his coat, the very sign of his father's love, and threw him into a pit. Then, instead of killing him outright, they sold him as a slave to passing traders. From that moment on, Joseph's life took a sharp turn. He went from favored son to forgotten servant, from being clothed in honor to being chained in shame. After being sold into slavery, Joseph's life looked hopeless. Imagine being taken from your home, from the love of your father, and placed in a strange land where no one knows your name or your story. Yet, even in Egypt, far away from everything familiar, God's presence never left him. Joseph was sold to Potiphar, a powerful Egyptian officer. At first, he was nothing more than a servant, but God's favor was upon him. Everything Joseph touched prospered, and soon Potiphar noticed. He placed Joseph in charge of his entire household, trusting him with great responsibility. It seemed like Joseph's life was starting to rise again, but just when things looked brighter, another wound came. Potiphar's wife accused Joseph of something he never did. She tried to trap him, and when he refused to sin against God, she twisted the story and painted him as guilty. Potiphar, angry and deceived, threw Joseph into prison. Once again, Joseph's faithfulness was met with betrayal. It's here that we see the repeating pattern. Joseph's enemies thought they were destroying him, but God was using their actions to move him closer to his destiny. In the prison, Joseph didn't let bitterness consume him. He continued to trust God and to use the gifts God had given him. Soon, the prison warden noticed that Joseph was different, responsible, wise, and trustworthy. He placed Joseph in charge of the other prisoners. While in prison, Joseph met two men who had served in Pharaoh's court, the cupbearer and the baker. Both had dreams that troubled them, and Joseph, gifted with interpreting dreams, explained their meanings. To the cupbearer, Joseph gave hope. He would be restored to his position. To the baker, Joseph spoke truth. His life would come to an end. Just as Joseph said, both dreams came true. Before the cupbearer left, Joseph asked him to remember him, to speak of him to Pharaoh. But once again, Joseph was forgotten. 2 more years passed in the prison, waiting, wounded by neglect. One night, Pharaoh himself had two troubling dreams. None of Egypt's wise men or magicians could explain their meaning. That's when the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph, the man who had interpreted his dream in prison. Suddenly, after years of being forgotten, Joseph's name was brought before the most powerful ruler in Egypt. Joseph was quickly summoned, cleaned up, and brought to stand before Pharaoh. Imagine that moment. A man once thrown into a pit by his brothers, chained as a slave, and locked in a prison cell, now standing in the royal court. Pharaoh shared his dreams, and Joseph, with humility, made it clear that it was not his own wisdom, but God's power that gave the interpretation. Joseph explained the dreams. Egypt would face 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of severe famine. But he didn't just give the warning, he gave the solution. Joseph advised Pharaoh to store grain during the years of plenty, so that Egypt would survive the years of lack. Pharaoh was so impressed that he placed Joseph as second in command, ruler over all of Egypt. From the pit to the palace, Joseph had risen. But the story doesn't end there. The famine struck not only Egypt, but the lands around it, including Canaan, where Joseph's family lived. His brothers, the same ones who wounded him with betrayal, now came to Egypt seeking food. They bowed before him, not realizing that the powerful ruler before them was the brother they had sold into slavery. This was the moment of divine justice. The wounds they caused, the rejection, the lies, the cruelty, were now staring back at them. They had thrown Joseph down, but God had lifted him higher than they could have ever imagined. And now, the very brothers who once stripped him of his coat were standing before him, desperate and in need of his help. Joseph had the power to repay them with the same cruelty they had shown him. He could have rejected them, imprisoned them, or sent them away to starve, but instead, he tested their hearts, watching if they had changed. Eventually, Joseph revealed his identity to them, weeping and saying, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about the saving of many lives." But notice something deeper. Joseph did not allow bitterness to rule his heart. Instead of striking back, he chose mercy. He told his brothers not to be afraid, reminding them that although they intended harm, God turned it into good. The famine could have wiped out entire nations, but because of Joseph's position, lives were saved. His wounds became the pathway to deliverance, not only for Egypt, but for his own family too. This is the lesson we can take today. Your enemies may think they are breaking you, but in reality, they are positioning you. Every betrayal, every lie, every rejection is seen by God. And while they may rejoice for a moment, God has the final word. Their cruelty may plant seeds, but those seeds will grow into a harvest they must face. Meanwhile, God uses your pain to shape you, prepare you, and lift you into places you never imagined. Think about it. If Joseph had never been thrown into the pit, he would never have been sold to Egypt. If he had never been falsely accused, he would never have been placed in prison. And if he had never been in prison, he wouldn't have been in position to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. What seemed like wounds were actually stepping stones. So when enemies rise against you, don't lose hope. Don't think their words or actions will have the final say. God sees every wound, and he promises that vengeance belongs to him. Just like Joseph, you may be hurt, but you will not be defeated. Your enemies will one day stand in the place Joseph's brothers stood, in need, humbled, and reaping what they once sowed. And when that day comes, you'll realize something powerful. Their attempt to destroy you only positioned you for the destiny God already had prepared.